Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to go over some tips for studying anatomy and physiology, especially in college. The anatomy and physiology course can be a beast. There is so much material and so many things that are covered that you have to memorize or understand, and so it can feel incredibly overwhelming. One of my professors described it as feeling like an elephant sitting on your chest, but it definitely does not have to be like that. It can be conquered and you can be a successful student. So we'll go over just a few tips on how to study well for anatomy and physiology and earn your A in the course. So these tips will be divided into two main sections. The first section will be tips for being in class, going to lectures. The second section will be for outside of class study and exam prep. So let's dive into it. The first one might seem a little bit obvious, but you would be surprised at how many people do not actually do this. The first tip is to go to class, for real. Actually go to class. Go to the lecture, go to lab, sit there, have your laptop open with the PowerPoint slides that the professor is going over, and actively listen. So active listening could include, like I said, having the PowerPoint pulled up and going along with the professor as they're talking and lecturing on the material, taking notes, whether on your computer or on a hard copy, like a piece of paper with pen, whichever you prefer, and make eye contact with the professor while they're speaking. It might seem kind of weird, but that's just, again, making sure you're actively listening and engaged with the material and with the content. You can also record the lecture and listen to it later, which I found really helpful, especially if there are harder concepts that are more difficult to grasp. You can go back later and have the professor explain it again. That way the repetitiveness can help you understand it. Another tip is to find something in the lecture material that you can ask your professor more about. You don't have to have a question after every single lecture, but at least maybe like once a week or once every other week would be good, even if it's something small and even if you have to look for it. And the reason for this is because when you go to your professor after class or after a lecture and you have a question to ask them, not only will it help you understand the material on a deeper level, starting to develop that relationship with them and that rapport, it also shows them that you are really ready and willing to learn. It demonstrates a lot of discipline, hard work, maturity, and they will definitely respect that. And you never know where it could lead. It might be that you just have a really good relationship with them to learn more about the material or to get exam help, but it could also potentially open doors to future jobs. You never know where it could lead. And the last tip for this section is to find like-minded students. So find students in your class who also want to be successful and who are also dedicated to studying the material and knowing it, and form a study group. It really helps and does wonders to have other people who can support you and other people you can bond over how it's so hard. So don't underestimate finding a couple of people in your class to study with and tackle anatomy and physiology. The second set of tips that I have for you today have to do with outside of class study / preparing for exam. So the first one is to have a set time each and every day that you have dedicated and set apart for studying anatomy and physiology, and stick with that routine. Review the material covered in lectures, in lab, and doing this consistently every single day will help keep the material fresh in your mind as you review what you've just learned and then also what you have learned in the past. That way, when you do have the exam come up, there are concepts that you are already very familiar with and have studied over and over again. So exam prep will just basically be like review. The second tip is to find out how you learn best. So there are different types of ways people learn. You can either be someone who learns by actively doing or moving. You can be someone who learns the best by hearing information. You can be someone who learns the best by reading and writing, or you can be a visual learner. And those are, again, not that you have to only be one of those, but typically people are more one or the other. So figure out how you learn best and implement study strategies that cater towards that method of learning. So for example, if you learn best with movement or actually doing things, you'll probably learn best in the labs where you're handling objects and labeling diagrams. But another good study strategy to use could be taking flashcards out on a walk, so you are physically moving while you are reviewing the material, or incorporating a lot of study breaks where you get up from your desk and move around. If you are someone who primarily learns by reading and writing, then the PowerPoints are probably going to be one of your best friends, as well as the textbook. as you are reading the text and gaining information about the concepts in that way. So your study methods will look a lot like having highlighters or colored pens and pencils and writing out the material. If you are a visual learner, then the diagrams and chart are going to be very helpful, as well as writing out steps of different processes or systems. And this is something that I have found really helpful from personal experience and study, is drawing diagrams and labeling them. A lot of the times your professor will have lab diagrams that you can use, so you can make copies of them and just continue to practice labeling them, or you can draw them out yourself and label them. And then finally, for the exam prep, when you are about to take your exam, one thing that is incredibly helpful in the study process is to make your own study guide. And for this, make sure you are sticking to whatever the professor has designated as the learning objectives for each and every module. Typically, they will put those at the beginning of the lecture, and it will just explain what the student is to gain from that specific lecture. So you can use those as your outline, and then as you are creating your study guide, draw from the material and put it under each one. That way you have an outline for your study guide as well as the material, and you know what the professor is looking for as far as knowledge goes for what will be tested on the exam. But yeah, I hope that these tips have helped in some form or fashion. Anatomy and physiology is a really interesting, fun, amazing class, and it does not have to be daunting. So I wish you the very best in your studies and want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.